I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. Yet another lovely day in New York City. I'm here with Andrew Kuo, who has discovered a new passion.
Yeah, new old passion. A different
new old
passion. Yeah, it's a changing of the cat guard, as they say. I've been feeding a stray cat in my block. Okay, let me frame this. I moved to a new neighborhood, Bed-Stuy. It's kind of like more quiet than the Lower East Side, Manhattan. There's
You do miss the fentanyl district, though. You can't get your K2 pouches as readily.
at some point I was seeing like a dead body once a month in the Lower East Side. What I thought was a dead body, and sometimes an actual dead body with like an ambulance and like a white cloth over them. But it was time to go a little bit. And I'm all for that. I think we've talked about this before. I'm all for that clinic on Delancey that makes the McDonald's so lit. It has to be there, right? Like it's an artery for the city. People need help. I'm all for it, but it's just hard to live there as you get older. And so I'm in the new.
Are you a conservative Twitter account talking
What do you
about the
mean? Are they
horrors of
into?
living in New York City? We're going to get into that.
Oh, we're gonna get into that. But I'm pro fentanyl clinics. No,
I'm pro
treating.
fentanyl. I think it's a fabulous miracle drug.
They used to be everywhere in parks here. Those little containers, those little colorful containers. Not so much anymore. I wonder if the supply is run
Mm.
dry.
It's just a foil thing. It's a little bit of Fenty and foil, and then you're good to go.
It's changed. It's switched jerseys. It's team uniforms.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's even like the designer little baggies that heroin made famous with
Mhm, mhm.
the branded variety. Like this is the one that killed River Phoenix.
Yeah. What was that scorpion stamp on it or something?
But yeah, I honestly think it was something like that. It's like the Viper Room's specialty.
Yeah, yeah. The Guns N' Roses hit. But anyway, like I've been noticing this cat roaming around. Beautiful cat, white with brown and black spots. Um, and someone's been taking care of it, but I've decided to be proactive and to help my community by taking care of this cat. And I have been posting it on social media. And here's my dilemma: it's not just taking care of a cat. I can't bring it in because I have two other cats, whatever. And I think some cats enjoy being outside. This one seems to not want to come inside. I've tried, but I've posted my journey of taking care of this cat on social media, and a few people have been like, "Oh, do you want me to send someone over to like scoop that cat to maybe put it in a position to be adopted, whether that be online or in a shelter and all that?" What should I do? Is that counter what to the happiness of this outdoor cat?
So is this cat definitely a stray?
I'm unsure because it's not rail skinny, but it's famished. So like every time I leave out a bowl of food, it's voraciously eating it, and it shows up at the same time every day at morning, dinner time. My dinner time, which is 4 p.m., 3 p.m. on a good day. Um, and then, I'm thinking about getting it a little house for the winter, if that works. I leave out water and food, wet, dry. Always comes and eats. So I don't know. I really
What
don't
if
know if
there's a
someone else is
neighbor?
doing it. Yo, for sure.
Is it
It's
There's a
been
neighbor who's
alive
like,
for, yeah.
our cats just doesn't seem the same anymore. It's like he's cheating on us with someone else. We put out his food. Maybe it's not the most delicious food in the neighborhood. He's refusing to eat it. He always leaves around dinner time.
Well, it's got a clipped ear, so it has been scooped, fixed, and re-released. So whatever that means. Someone might have been like, "Yo, someone clipped my cat's ear," you know?
Oh, explain this to me. I don't understand the nuances of stray cat
It's
politics.
it's a whole culture. Holy shit. Like cat rescue culture on Instagram is insane. That's how I found my two cats that I have right now. Just through weirdos being like, I picked up this cat. It's under my bed now. I'm like, I'll come and get it. I can take on another cat. But am I the weirdo? Anyway, it so there's volunteers that kind of pick up stray cats, bring them to places where they get spayed or neutered, and then re-release them. And they clip the ear. It's kind of brutal, but they clip the ear because it's a easily most recognizable signifier that the cat has been fixed. 'Cause they don't want to spend resources bringing cats in, and be like, this cat's been fixed, you know.
Right.
Um, so it's a good thing that their ears are clipped for the population, for the health of cats. The fewer cats, the easier it is to take care of the ones that exist.
I've been
Um,
clipping the ears of unfixed cats just to kind of throw a wrinkle into this arrangement.
how has that been? Good luck on that. Jesus. How do you even get close to them?
It's it's my passion. Worked really hard at this. Um,
Can't wait
Honestly, I
to.
gotta say, this all sounds very unobjectionable to me.
Hmm.
As someone who is very much turned against the dog owner community
Oh,
due to their
stop.
overpopulation,
You
like
sound like
they need to be culled.
they're eating the dogs. They're eating the dogs. Hot
I'm okay
dogs.
with dogs. There's just too many of them. It's dog owners believing that their animals are children is my issue. That
People
they
want to
want their
say,
homes.
yeah. People want to say drivers are the worst part of New York. Me. Dog owners are the worst part of New York.
Thank
God
you.
damn, there's a lot of shit on the street.
Yeah, there's shit everywhere. They don't stay in their little dog enclosures. They run rampant in parks. You can see where the dogs run because there's no grass. Like they shred the grass. They give people, I don't know, what is the tapeworm or ringworm or whatever, because they poo and pee in the
The
grass.
funky worm.
The funky worm.
Okay, bench
Yeah.
start cut.
Anyway,
Uber drivers, dog owners, or righteous bicyclists.
mm,
Bike lane dorks.
I'm okay with bike lane dorks,
No,
even
you're
though I don't
not.
really
No, you're
bike.
not.
I'm
Oh,
okay with that.
so you're starting bike lane dork. They're the worst, man. They think they always have the right of way no matter what. They never have the right of way. Well,
I mean, I
pedestrians
don't.
always do.
I agree. I just don't have that. Even as someone who drives, I don't hate bikers that much. They aren't that bad anymore. I feel like bikers were worse when I used to bike around, when there weren't bike lanes.
Oh,
No,
interesting. And
you'd
then
really
they
be like,
took you off the bike lanes, and all of a sudden it got better.
I
RJ
mean,
Barrett over
this
here.
is I mean, this is the opposite of what other people would suggest. I'm like, no, actually, bikers did stink back then, but it was because you had to be really protective and you had to really
Because of
watch
me, right?
yourself. And it was mostly my doing. But I was not part of the tall bike culture, which may
Oh,
or may not still exist.
that's some crazy Austin shit. I'm just talking about like the evolution of the bike messenger, which doesn't exist anymore, which is crazy. To just people who are like, get out of the bike lane. I'm like,
Right. No,
can you
I'm
not
agreeing
stop
with
your
you.
bike?
I feel like the normalization of biking, especially with city bike, and it becoming sort of slower and more leisurely, and that prototype that you're describing, the bike messenger, which was kind of a distinctly cool New York thing, except incredibly obnoxious at the same
Yeah,
time. But it
yeah.
was like a thing.
Hmm.
There's one I know left. Not to say there aren't more left than one, but I know one, and I see him around, and
It's drugs, right?
he's definitely kind of crazy.
Hmm.
I see him talking to himself on his bike all the time. And I'll see him around Greenpoint in the neighborhood. Nice guy. I totally unobjectionable. Nice guy. But I've seen him biking down Broadway in the city and he didn't even notice me. And he's just yelling at cars, screaming at drivers and pedestrians. I don't think that's the norm anymore, though.
Is he getting high on his own supply of bad weed? Is it just making him angry?
He's a weed guy for sure.
It has to be, right? Like a lot of these delivery like services for food are really people just delivering casual drugs, maybe hard drugs, maybe Fenty. I don't know.
I don't know what he's delivering, but he's a weed guy for sure in terms of his personal use.
They hang out
But
at River Bar in Williamsburg. It's just like all of them. I'm like, these are all the delivery people. I'm like, oh, I see what's happening. We got to beef that out. I don't want to
yeah,
narc on the biking community. So you're starting the bikers, and then your bench are cutting drivers or dog owners.
I'm cutting dog owners.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
had enough. The
Mm-hmm.
city is for people.
But what about the good dog owners? Are not all dog owners a movement?
I mean, I don't think there are such thing as a good dog owner in New York City because it's really difficult to be a good dog owner here.
Small dog owner?
I mean, those are less objectionable. If you're going to keep your dog in your house, great. But just once you introduce a dog to the sidewalk in New York City, a dog to the parks, a dog, it's not a good environment for the dog, and it's not a good environment for people to encounter dogs. But
Yeah, yeah.
it's just the issue right now is volume.
Mm.
Like I would not have said this was a major problem that bugged me 5 or 10 years ago. Pre-pandemic, not an issue. But now everyone working remote. They don't have to take the train. They can be around a dog all day. They want companionship. They can take walks. They can answer phone calls. They can use their phone. I get why people want a dog,
Mhm.
but it's an animal. It's not like a cat, which at least it stays in your house. People don't walk their cats usually.
No, sometimes, unless you're weird. Um, when's the last time you saw a stray dog in New York City?
Good question.
It's like a bike messenger, totally endangered, extinct.
People wouldn't believe there used to be a lot of stray dogs too.
I'm saying, right? Just like going through garbage, hopping around.
I mean, you'd go out to Red Hook and you'd see 20 of them.
Yeah,
They were roving packs of them. I remember going to Sonny's bar back in the day, and like 20 dogs rolled up, and someone tackled one of them, and they pulled out the worm from the dog's ear on the floor of the bar.
wait, what? Like an
Literally
actual funky worm?
extracted a long parasitic funky worm
Oh
from
my
the
gosh,
dog's ear on the
that's
floor
so
of the bar, and then released him back to the wild.
that's crazy. I mean, certain things have gotten worse in New York, and certain things are better. Whoever's taking care of these funky dog worms did a great job because we don't. I mean, I've been to Sunny's bar. What, like last time I went was 3 years ago. No roving pack of dogs.
The old New York, back when it was
I,
real,
yeah,
we all were taking worms out of the ears of dogs on a Red Hook bar that at that point may not even have been legally open.
was De Blasio the dog czar?
This is when Sonny's might have been a speakeasy or something.
That's a pretty good bar. It gets real loud.
Great bar.
Yeah. Um, are do you think New York is cooked? This is an evergreen topic. This guy Alex Finn jumped online and people took the bait, but it was delicious,
Finally,
delicious bait.
finally, someone had the bravery to criticize New York City. Wow. Wow. I read it and was agog.
A
Here's what he's
dog,
saying.
a dog.
I was agog. A dog. uh,
They're eating the
Alex Finn.
dogs.
He describes himself as Steve Jobs mixed with Steve Austin, so you know he's really cool. Oh, he's building
Building
the
the
first.
billionaire company, my dope
Oh
company,
yeah,
1% Better X. So this guy's
yeah. Yeah.
clearly a Musk fan, right?
Followed by Kevin O'Connor. Sorry.
I
All right, so yeah, Alex Finn, who's clearly bought thousands and hundreds of thousands of followers, other than Kevin O'Connor, who seems to like what he's up to, says, "I'm done with New York City. I honestly don't understand why anyone chooses to live here. He was born here and lived the last 9 years. Can't think of anything redeemable. It's disgusting. Full of garbage and violence and chaos. Smells like weed. Smoke shops everywhere. Don't see why that's a big deal.
I
Mail
know.
gets stolen. It's expensive. Taxes are high." And he goes on and on and on, and then says, honest question, why would anyone choose to live here anymore? Andrew, I know you agree with him for what you just said. You are in
He makes a
lockstep with
he makes a
KOC and Alex Finn.
He makes a great point, but he wrote this incorrectly. He wrote, I honestly don't understand why anyone chooses to live here. He's not an A+ debater here, right? You don't leave that open to people to explain why he's a loser. He's a loser because he has no friends. He's just got to go into the garbage, go into the dogs and the bike messengers, shit that we kind of can relate to. So he phrased this wrong. He's probably like the same guy who is interested in pickleball and articles about male loneliness. And I was reading this, all the responses to this guy, and he's a type, right? And I was like, I don't mean to toot my own horn here, but I find it to be very, very easy to make friends. You just go to a place, whoever you know might not know bartender, just listen to people and be willing to change your mind, and you got a new friend. It's really not hard.
Be willing to buy someone with no money beers.
Yeah,
Voila.
yeah.
You are now the Don of downtown New York.
If you have enough money to buy someone 2 brew dogs, you have a friend who will text you being like, "Hey, I'm at the bar. Are you around?" I'm like, I have enough money to buy you brew dogs.
Yeah, we've become really close lately. I've purchased him 2 beers per week, and now
Yeah.
that is my best friend, and he's going to be my pallbearer.
I had 2 friends like that who ended up being like some of my best friends. They were just like, I'm really broke. I have no money. Can you float me before we go to that free event with Travis Scott performing? And I'm like, yeah. Well, pregame on my dime, 2 beers, and then drink free Red Bull for the rest of the night.
From 10 until midnight, I'm taken care of. I'm going to have a tiger beer in each hand. Until then,
Oh,
I need a little help, Andrew.
yeah, yeah. Um,
There's Bud
but
Light Select in them there hills.
like all these things Alex Finn listed, garbage, violence, weirdness, whatever, smelling weed, packages stolen, that's crazy. Expensive. These are all true things, right? Like I cannot debate that taxes are high and landlords are assholes. Like, sure. But like if all my friends move to Poughkeepsie, Albany, Ithaca, I might have to move up there too, right? Aren't you? Isn't the city just the sum of the people you like to be around? If you don't like to be around anybody, leave this fucking city.
Well, I think there's that. But also, if you're going to say, well, none of the cultural contributions or charms of New York matter to me, like I don't care about art galleries or museums or music or anything
I don't care about
that comes with,
women's basketball championships.
if you don't care about any of those things and you are solely looking at this through the spectrum of rent versus cleanliness.
Right, right. You're fucked. Yeah,
Well, yeah, you shouldn't be here, you know.
yeah.
And someone's like, well, do you have to be here for work? And he's like, well, you know, I think in his post he says, well, you can work remote now. So why would anyone be here? And it's like, okay, well, that's your calculus. Work, the value of being in an economic center, of meeting people in your respective field, whatever the fuck his field is. This $1 billion company that he's making is a LeBron of this whatever he's doing, whatever
Right, right.
Alex Finn is up to. But it's like the professional benefits of New York times the cost of being here times the cleanliness. Well, yeah, you shouldn't be here.
Yeah. Is being interested a skill? Like, for example, this week, debatable epicenter of the sports world, New York City, right? And I was thinking, I'm like, oh, some of my best friends don't care about sports. They wouldn't pay attention to the Mets, Jets, and Liberty playing at the same time on a Sunday night. They wouldn't be like, how much does it cost to be in the Liberty Arena? How much does it cost to be at a bar hanging with my friends, with the deadbeat friend watching the Mets game? And then after that, what's the cost of my time talking about it? Just living that hobby. I'm like, these are all big things that require a certain kind of dedication that I'm like, right, the world is interesting to you because you have the skill of being interested.
And this also ties into this concept of a civic center.
Mhm.
I don't care about the Yankees. I don't care about the Mets. But
Get out of here. So sick.
but when this is happening and everyone's talking about it, I'm like, what's up with the Yankee series? What's going
Oh
on? What's
yeah.
going on? Is it
You
going to be
sent us
Dodgers?
that
Mets?
on your flight back from Paris. You sent me and Luch a text being like, and Doe being like, yo, what's the update on the Yankees game? I'm like, Ben Dietrich in the
I
Sinbin?
I
In the
just wanted to know.
Sinbin?
But it's what you're saying. I just wanted to know. I don't have any vested interest. I just vested interest. You see that?
Yeah.
That's what you call being a wordsmith, Andrew. It's why I
Yeah.
do what I do.
But like, if you don't like, my first response to this idea, I love refreshing this idea in my justifying all of these things we put up with every 5 months when someone tweets this evergreen idea. I'm like, it's the food. It's like killer slices. Just being honest, not no hyperbole. I'm like, killer pizza, killer food, some galleries, some fun sports stuff. And I'm like, what if those three things weren't on available to me? Then I'd be more of a Netflix head, but like maybe I'd go to the movies, maybe the Paris Theater. I don't know. Like maybe I would go to, God forbid, Broadway. Not to
Yeah.
leak our next drop, or Lincoln Center. I was up at Lincoln Center with our buddy Hua watching the Pavement documentary. I'm like, this city is fucking endless, man.
Well, yeah, I think it'd be interesting for a little Isaac Asks type of vibe with this Finn dude.
Mm-hmm.
As in, okay, favorite neighborhood. Ooh, Battery
Triple
Park.
yeah. Murray Hill, baby.
Favorite restaurant, Sweet Green. Like what does he like? Where does he eat? What like favorite friend? Ooh, oof. Ugh.
It's like
Name a friend.
my friend in Dallas who I talk to every day, Like, go to fucking Dallas. I mean,
Hobbies, watching Amazon originals.
yeah. And like I enjoy curmudgeons. And I do think someone, if he does actually exist or live in New York City, like this is fun. Like at least he has an opinion. Um, I bet you he lives in Union Square in like a really nice slash loft kind of place. But like, this is the type of person who looks at Delancey McDonald's and is like, this is a shithole. I'm like, no, no, it's a cultural epicenter. Like, this is a valuable part of New York City.
Well,
It's funny.
it's what you said maybe on Twitter, but kind of ties into the marketing campaign for the champion New York Liberty. It's like winning isn't for everyone. And they had shirts that said New York isn't for everyone. And I feel like you tweeted that the other day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
But
I'm
in
stuck on this
response
idea. Yeah.
but in response to this guy even. But yeah, there were people at the Liberty game yesterday wearing New York is not for everybody or whatever that to paraphrase.
Oh, really? That's crazy.
Yeah. But it's because Nike does a campaign that's winning, it's not for everybody.
Oh, I mean,
So like they switched
correct.
it to New York, which is the quo takeaway.
I
And
mean, yeah.
but to me that's exactly correct here with this guy. It's like the concept of New York being for everyone is relatively new. I mean, when I moved here a long time ago, it was not seen as a place where everyone would just go to New York. Of course, it's a safe, large city, and even if it's this fictional concept that right wingers and conservatives want to say about like the blue state and immigration and crime and garbage and rats and all these things, it still is true though. Not everyone should be in New York City. Some people belong in an exurb of Dallas. It's just true.
Yeah. I mean, after the Yankees win a game, we hear Frank Sinatra. After the Liberty won the championship last night, I heard them blaring New York, New York. And the lyrics are just there. If I can make it here, I can make it anywhere. I'm like, well, that means that many people don't make it here. And that doesn't mean like get rich or anything, but it's like I fucking hate stepping on shit. I hate these bicyclists. I hate these Uber drivers. I'm like, should consider that this place might not be for you. But if they're like, yo, but my best friends, we get together every week, and I'm like, this place is for you. You're just a curmudgeon, which is fine. Like I
Well,
love that.
also it comes down to your expectations, right? If you
Yeah.
say, well, I want to live in a Village townhouse or a FIDI condo that costs, 25,000 a month in rent, and I want to be chauffeured around and take private planes and live this Masters of the Universe mogul style life in New York City, and I'm not having that. This version is not for me. The
Yeah.
version where I have a roommate and live in Turtle Bay and take the subway around, and I don't know anybody, and I don't like food, and I don't like music, and I don't like culture, and I don't like hanging out.
They're like
Wrong
people.
place.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm totally down if I get to be a billionaire here. I think that
Yeah.
would be a sick way for me to experience New York City.
Yeah.
This one, not the one.
You have any takes on this controversy brewing in your favorite neighborhood, Nolita, about the Elizabeth Street Park? You know that little park near
Mm.
Lovely Day, that is full of old like architectural remnants, like gargoyles and columns, and it's beautiful. You can stroll through. It's open to the public for certain hours of the day, but they're getting rid of it for a seniors housing building. You got any takes?
Um, Tough one, because on one hand, it is privately owned. It's not a park, so there is a perception that they're like tearing apart a sculpture garden and park that's open to the public all the time, and it's just not, as you said. I've been to parties there
Yeah,
a while back,
fashion
and
shows.
well, there was above that the antique store that's connected to it. I guess that might be who owns it.
I think it is. Yeah,
But I remember being at house parties there a couple times, and I don't know who lived there. I'm not trying to be incriminating. I'm not saying there was anything,
there's only
vile
room
or
for one narc
nefarious.
on this podcast. Yeah,
I'm just saying it was. I just remember being at a party in that apartment or in that building, overlooking that, and we were kind of like walking down and we were wandering the park, and it's cool. It is a nice landmark. So on one hand, it's not. It is privately owned, and the other hand, it is a landmark. People know of it. They sit there during the day. It's a nice little place in the neighborhood. That turning it into condos, I understand
not
or
condos, senior housing.
senior housing. Turning it into senior housing is good for some seniors, no doubt, but it's not a sexy result. It doesn't necessarily make the neighborhood more charming or nicer to hang out in, but for the greater good, maybe it's better. Tough one. I honestly don't really have a strong take on it. Personally, because I'm not a senior, like I
Yeah,
would say, yeah, I would not yet. Right around the corner.
yeah, I know.
I would say, yeah, leave it as a park out of like for selfish reasons. Like, okay, I can walk by there and hang out there. That's nicer than senior housing. But also that's not necessarily the right answer.
You're not a not in my neighborhood. You're not a yes in my neighborhood. You're just a IMBY. IMBY Nation, stand up. Um, when my first son was born, I took him to that park almost every day. It is like a beautiful place. I just went there last week because I was like, we live far away now, but we got to take the family back because it's not going to be here forever. And I have such fond memories of it, just sitting there, just like bewildered at my new life with this new Knicks squad. It's like Steve Mills doesn't run the team anymore. James Dolan took a step back. Sitting in the Elizabeth Street Park, looking at my new life was daunting, but it felt like I was at home. And when I heard this news that they were going to tear it down, I was like, you just got to do it. And you're right. It is complicated because I think a methadone clinic or senior housing is extremely valuable to the infrastructure of a city and the health of a city. But so is beauty. And then we get into kind of like some culture critic stuff. If we remove enough beauty from a place, then all we have is functionality. And I like modern stuff. I like the new MSG. I don't like Corinthian columns or cherubs carved in stone. Like I just don't care about that stuff.
Dude, just don't lie. I mean, voice
I'm a
your
column
opinion.
bro. Yeah.
You love cherubs, and you always have.
Yeah. I
You're,
love
a
a
ch-
good
you're
gargoyle. Who doesn't? Spooky season.
I love a
Um,
gargoyle.
yeah, they're sick. But like, at what point do we try to save even private things that are beautiful? Like, I think of that statue of Lenin that was on top of Red Square, right on Houston. It was such an odd thing to look up there with the Tibor Kalman clock and all that. M and Company, one of the most amazing design studios ever. And now that statue of Lenin lives somewhere else. And that building was so weird as like a communist kind of kitschy, campy idea in in an architectural language. It was privately owned. It was someone's vision. They got bored and moved away from it. But it was awesome, right? Just to have something there that wasn't nothing. And while I think they should put up senior housing, it sucks for the community there, and it kind of sucks for the community of New York City.
Yeah, and I don't think that New York has a ton of beauty in the way that some cities do. This is coming from the perspective of returning from Paris, which obviously
Can't compete.
emphasizes beauty over all else.
Yeah, you can't compete with Paris.
You can't even make buildings that don't fit in with the Parisian aesthetic.
Let's
If
build a
they're-
Champs Elysees in Bed-Stuy near the koi pond.
Perfect. But Eastern Parkway, you got it.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, they really prioritize aesthetics, and somewhere like Berlin really prioritizes green space. There's tons and tons and tons of green space there. Like squares, canals, tons. And New York City, we have parks, but it's not everywhere. Especially in that area that's
it's getting better.
kind of congested.
Yeah.
But parks are not a big deal here because real estate's so expensive. We rarely get a new park, and if we do, it's in a weird place and it's part of some other real estate endeavor.
And
Hey, you get the High Line now, and it's like, yeah, but that's because we're gonna build a suicide,
gyro. Yeah.
shawarma. Yeah.
But also, I mean, to the delicious point of radical New Yorkers, there's a commerce in safety, right? There's money to be made with the idea of safety. So parks run counterintuitive of that because parks are where people gather and do drugs or quote unquote do bad things, listen to loud music that neighbors don't appreciate. There's that vision, that Bloombergian vision of the city.
Right. I mean, this goes back to sociology classes that I took about like deviance. It's like,
Yeah.
homelessness is like a great one. It's like, you don't own property, you're a fucking deviant.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have anywhere to go. It's like, you're a criminal.
Yeah. But that said, right? Like, if you are just someone chilling and someone makes your experience of chilling horrible in a park, that is not just be like, oh man, I'm getting fucked up sociologically. You're just an unhoused person who's just like me. It's like, I think it would be naive to say just like, there aren't things that we can improve on. Maybe this housing complex that's going up in the Elizabeth Street Park has facilities to rehabilitate people who are maybe schizophrenic or maybe need help and then put them in there to live. That kind of thing is important to New York City specifically, right? Because there's not enough of it.
And I mean, I don't know that this is exactly the YIMBY stance, because a lot of the YIMBY stance to me is just about more housing versus, yes, build a homeless shelter next door to me. Yes, bring in the senior housing. A lot of it's like, no, rezone this so that we can build condos so that I can live in this neighborhood.
Mm,
They're I'm saying it's not always this idea of, well, instead of sending them off to Brownsville, they should be here. There's no reason that all people who are in need should be shunted off to, like, the least desirable distant neighborhoods in New York. That, yes, Nolita, which is this incredibly popular, expensive neighborhood, should also be a place that has to pull its weight in terms of housing people who have problems, and is in fact better equipped to do that because of the relative
density of it.
economic security and
Yeah.
of the neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, the density of the artery of New York, where kind of Nolita is important, right? And you don't. I think
It's where dirtbags move back and forth between the Canal District, if you will, and the East
Nolita
Village.
dirtbags, right? And talk shit online about the people that. I wonder if he's into this or not. It would seem that through his account, snarky as hell, he'd be into kind of tampering down the coolness of Nolita.
Perhaps we could ask him. The Nolita Dirtbag team was represented in the last Cookies Hoops Classic.
I liked his account, but yeah, I don't know if I mean housing is number one, right? So even if people who are yimbys, self-proclaimed yimbys, were like, I just want more affordable housing, I'm like, well, that is like a certain answer. Every election that comes up, the mayoral election, I'm like, the number one issue with this city is always, can someone who wants to live here live here? And if someone who wants to live in New York City cannot live here, and if they have a job, all that stuff, then that's fucked up. I want to be able, I want to live in a city where people can stay and people can move to. And that, housing, stand up Manhattan. I don't know if that's ever going to happen in our lifetime, but like more housing kind of solves that immediate stress.
This is true, but also look, the expense of New York is real. Even someone as wealthy as a hotelier, for example, someone who's ostensibly worth billions of dollars, has to take on a second job.
It's not work when you love it so much. When you like bathe in fish fillets, it's not actual work, right? It's just your life.
It's more of working that fry machine as a hobby or as art.
Mhm.
This Your canvas is bubbling oil.
And of course, you're talking about number one New York City sports fan, Donald Trump, cosplaying as a McDonald's employee, frying those fries, serving those burgers, putting on that headset. What a champion of the people.
So, besides the incredible visuals that we got out of this, my understanding is that it wasn't open. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah,
That it was a closed McDonald's?
of course, but it has to be, right? The outrage everywhere is amazing. I followed it all, but it's all to me a bunch of hooey because of course they had to close it.
Whoa,
I'm
whoa,
saying it.
whoa! This is a
H
this is a
bomb.
this
I
is a
dropped the H
family
bomb.
this is a family program. Andrew, come on. We don't
It's
just say the H word on here, unless of course you're talking about the former president working at McDonald's.
it's a fucking bunch of hooey.
Whoa.
Um, yep. And like they have to, I mean, this guy allegedly had a couple of assassination attempts under his loose belt in the last year. You can't have it open. You gotta close it. This is a photo op. And people who are like, it wasn't even real. I'm like, yeah, no shit.
Look at Huey Lewis over here with the news.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I apologize. That was unprofessional. And I inadvertently used the H bomb again, even if it wasn't in vain.
Gotta redraft the H bomb immediately.
So my thing is that him cosplaying as a McDonald's worker is true to Trump's brand. He loves fast food.
He loves McDonald's.
He didn't say, I'm going to go buy Il Buco, shout out to our buddy Bill Sharp, and say, I'm going to pretend to get in the kitchen and make some delicious short rib with horseradish and
And all lettuce
walnuts.
and chilled shaved celery. Mwah.
He didn't do that. He's like, no, you're getting McGriddles.
A fine sandwich. It ignited a lot of such entertaining banter. The Dime Square Curse, those socialist, fascist podcasters from Murray Hill were like, it's real, it's better than starving. Why are you, the elites, demonizing McDonald's? Like, this is just a real thing. They've gone pretty funny into that zone. But the arguments around this were such, I don't want to drop the H bomb again, bullshit.
Whoa,
Like,
whoa. Okay,
okay,
that's fine.
we can deal with bullshit.
I'll probably edit that out though, because you almost said hooey again.
No one wants to get caught in an H bomb trap, and I almost set it up for myself. But like, who cares, right? Like, it
Who
is
cares?
important. Here's a who.
Hooey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why are simple, like, next thing that'll happen is Kamala Harris will kiss a baby, and everyone's like, that's disgusting. After the age of COVID, you're putting this baby at health risk. You're an adult with all this bacteria on you. She is a murderer. Like, what are we doing? This is not real. Harris is going to run away with this election, right? We're worried about
Well,
McDonald's now.
well, my thing is, I just want to have a kind of a fast food arms race.
When's the last time you had fast food?
Well, I just want to see Kamala Harris at, like, she's a slutty vegan, or
That's not fast food.
Okay, fine. Kamala Harris is headed to Long John Silver's. RFK Jr., he's at the Bell making Meximelts, Mexican pizzas, Crunchwrap Supremes. Let's just ratchet this up. Take it all the way to the final boss. Who is willing to get behind the counter at Arby's?
Well, the first boss would be RFK Jr., right? Because his whole contribution to Trump's campaign is like, seed oils are bad. We're eating poison. We're all getting type 2 diabetes. Shelf stable ingredients are killing us. And we cannot eat all this flour. And he's right. And then his guy Trump is serving up French fries and burgers that are crazy, because growing up, I remember people being like, oh, the processed cheese is like really bad for you on a burger. And then they'd be like, oh, the meat's not really meat. It's soy and a bunch of filler. That's not really good. And now we're in 2024, and the worst thing in that burger is probably the bun, right?
I don't even know what materials are in the McDonald's hamburger bun.
I mean, it just doesn't go bad ever. It is shelf stable flour that is causing. I'm with RFK on this. A broken dock is right twice a game. That is what's killing people, not the meat, not the cheese.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable take. Also, all those things in the McDonald's burger are bad.
It's not the same McDonald's we grew up with back in the day. It's just the ingredients are totally different. You eat a Cool Ranch Dorito now, it's not the same.
Well, yeah, the point you made earlier, or at least the question you had earlier, I was like, when's the last time you had fast food? If we're excluding, say, stadium food, because that's the equivalent of fast food a lot of times. When I'm not talking about lavo, I'm not talking about lavo meatballs. I'm talking about if you just like, let's get some fries at a game, get a hot dog and fries. That's roughly.
That's not fast food. I'm talking about the industrial complex of like bagged instant shit.
Yes, I was clarifying that. I was saying if we're talking about those kinds of places, the Taco Bells, the
Chick-fil-A's, Popeyes. On my studio,
I guess it would be a Popeye sandwich. I tried the chicken sandwich one time, like when it was
viral sandwich.
Yeah, it was viral sandwich. There's one like a block from my old house. I was like, all right.
What 1 out of 10? What'd you think?
It was like 6. It was totally edible. It's good.
I thought it was so good. 7 or 8. I love fast food. I haven't had it as long as you haven't had it. My studio is on Broadway in Brooklyn, near the hospital. It is right near the famous Checkers, Dunkin' Donuts, Popeyes, Mecca, the Marcy stop. No, not the Marcy stop, the Myrtle stop. There is every single fast food I can think of in those like 3 or 4 blocks near the hospital. I'm talking shit that like Dairy Queen. I'm like, I don't see this shit in New York. Like the
Can Cornell West get back in this presidential race? Jill Stein, perhaps, head over to Checkers and turn this thing around.
but Trump is doing a thing, right? Like he is not the dumbest thing he's done this campaign. But like I'm so with RFK on this. I walk through all these landmarks, these Dairy Queens, these Burger Kings, these Popeyes, Taco Bell. Sometimes I stare longingly inside that Taco Bell because it is my favorite. But this stuff is some bullshit, right? Like this food has gotten so much worse than it was even 10 years ago.
I don't even know. I really have opted out of the fast food game.
Mhm.
And if someone said, no, actually, the Whopper is insanely good, it's fucking delicious, I wouldn't be hesitant to try it out of the health ramifications. I just think that it's comparatively bad to the other things you can get, especially somewhere like New York City. I mean, if you were on a road trip and you're like, I'm starving, I'll go buy a Taco Bell and be like, I'm thinking about it. But in my mind, the moments that I've enjoyed the Bell as a kid, first getting a driver's license and going to Taco Bell, like this is the life. At my whim, I can just be eating soft tacos. What could be better than that?
Mhm.
I kind of don't want to spoil some of those pleasant memories by eating it now and be like, this is vile.
That's
Why did I do
strange.
that?
Yeah. Uh, I was annoyed at one of my friends whose body is a temple, and they have
My
kids, and they're
ears
like,
are burning.
and my friend took his kids. It's like they deserve to have McDonald's once. Let's see what they're doing over there. I don't want to deprive them of a Happy Meal. They have to have one. And he was so annoying. I got so mad at him because he was like, sort of to your point. He was like, I've heard this is so good that it's so addictive that people cannot resist. I had a Big Mac meal and it was disgusting. And I was like, no, it's not. It is delicious. It is
That's
so
that's what
good
right.
and
That's
so
where I'm at.
keyed into everything that, like, I don't believe you, your opinions about politics, sports, music, all that's out the window because you're doing a thing. I know that Big Mac is horrible for you. It is certainly not bad tasting.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't. There's no reason to think that it would be terribly bad because it's fat and salt, and
It's been engineered to hit all of our neurons, right? Like,
yeah, yeah.
it is
Um,
yummy as hell. I dropped the Y bomb. I did it.
I think I came home really late. This is a few years back when I lived near a McDonald's, and I tried to get like the breakfast because I was coming home really early, and I got what's their breakfast thing that they have?
Bacon,
Is
egg,
it
and cheese, or the McGriddle, or
McGriddle or something like this? And it was really really sugary, and that didn't work for
the
me.
McGriddle. It's so good. I had one of those when it came out, bro. It was delicious.
Yeah, this was just too sugary, but I don't have a big like sweet tooth. But there's some guys I play ball with, especially younger ones, who will leave the gym, will be walking around, head down Delancey, and like, hey, I'm going to dart into the Delancey McDonald's or the Burger King over there,
Amazing, amazing.
and they'll grab two Whoppers and walk with them.
Yeah,
All right, that's like the metabolism of a 27-year-old,
exactly,
but
exactly.
sure,
I'm gonna drink 15 beers, do some THC. I don't know, whatever.
little
But
Fent.
like, yeah, yeah, get up on that fent. And I saw Trump. It's like, is a certain person's culture a costume when he dons that McDonald's apron and rolls his sleeves up, like we mentioned, he's cosplaying, and I had the thought in my head: Is it possible to be racist just by the things you wear? Because we claim it all the time, and Halloween's coming up, and there's certain people that have been canceled because they've dressed like people from other cultures. And I like got
Are
stony. I was
you
thinking,
are you renegotiating blackface? Is that where we're headed on this pod? Because I might say that's hooey.
I was sitting in the Elizabeth Street Park, and that's different but similar. I'm talking about like clothing, not like doing chinky-eyed face when you're white, like David Bowie famously did. That's what David Bowie's most famous for, being racist towards Asians. But I am not sure that it is possible to be racist just through the things you wear. Whew, I got it out. I got the takeout.
Wow. Can you give me an example of someone who's accused of being racist via what they wear? What would Gwen Stefani qualify in this?
There you go. Billie Eilish has been wearing clothes that have perked up people's attention because it signifies a certain community. Not quite juggalos, but like jabots, oversized stuff. Um, Maybe people think it's disingenuous because that's not her origin story. That's not necessarily her automatic target audience, but she's trying to sell records. She's also a cool kid, so Zoomers move in and out of styles. Like, was Ali G racist?
LAG was absolutely racist.
Are you
But
sure? Isn't
yes,
that just wasn't that art?
but he but he's a racist. I mean, that dude
Okay,
is a
okay,
racist.
I'm
I'm saying
getting
he
why
is a
that triggered you.
racist.
Okay, okay,
But I'm
let's
saying he
pick
is
someone
racist,
else.
and he was
Okay,
creating characters like of a specific group to like make fun of them. Like he's a shithead. Like that's all.
I fell into that trap. I know better to mention someone like Ali G on this pod. Let's pick someone else. Um, was Eminem racist?
No, because Eminem was wearing clothing that was from the culture that he was immersed in, whether or not it was one that he designed himself. He identified with it. It wasn't mimicry. It wasn't making fun of it. And I don't think Billie Eilish dressing like Uncle Murder means that she's bigoted.
Yeah.
It's, as you said, she's channeling early 2000s looks, which makes sense in the circular trajectory of how styles go. And yeah, it is someone else's culture from that era, but also that is how white kids dressed in 2003 too. It wasn't specifically like just rappers or just black people or Latino people. It was like the Jesse Pinkmans. It was Juggalos. Like those. So to me, her interest in those stylistic choices goes all the way back to the way that fashion always works. When people would look like hippies, like, hey, we're dressing like the Grateful Dead, we're dressing in tie dyes, we're doing these things. They weren't around for the 70s. So I just think these looks and these brands, yeah, there is a disjointed element of it where she's not of that age group. But when you see kids wearing vintage t-shirts, it's like saying, "Hey, okay, what are your top 5 favorite songs from Led Zeppelin? Oh, you wearing an Anthrax t-shirt? Like, do you like the remix with Public Enemy?"
And
Like,
like clothing is deeply personal and unique to someone's history. Um, it's I guess the whole premise hinges on how much you value authenticity, which we always get into on this pod. Like, is is uh is Angel Reese allowed to wear the jersey of not her own team? Like, it was odd to see her wearing a Liberty slash Lynx jersey last night. Um, and we get into when we mention like New York City is a melting pot as much as any other city, and like Yankees versus Mets, that debate always pops up, especially when they're in the postseason. It's like those are two different cultures, and then within those cultures, they're fragmented. Like there's the Bronx, there's Westchester, there's who wears what kind of gang, signifiers with sports teams, and how that kind of creates tribes, right? My my take, and I certainly could be wrong. It would be the first time ever, but I certainly could be wrong.
So
Is
I doubt you're wrong here.
right? Is that we do find offense in certain clothing styles and appropriation, but we should not. And I think homage is as strong as an idea as appropriation, if you believe in that. And I think excitement for a culture like which Billie Eilish is showing is not racist. It is excitement. And we get into discussions about authenticity and intent. And in my opinion, I get lost. But whatever these signifiers are, a lot of it is through love. But of course, there's offensive things when, like, people dress up as Asian people and hop around and mimic stuff. And I'm like, it's tough when we take a more macro view when you have St. Patrick's Day and people wear green, and Halloween where people pretend like they're Boston Celtics. And it is so fraught with contradiction that I have decided that, like, it doesn't exist. Like, this racist answer I'm looking for in costumes, I can never find.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff at play here, obviously, and clothing is just one of various cultural factors, right?
Mhm.
Because you could say, well, taking someone's style of dance, style of music, and appropriating it and then benefiting and capitalizing off of that, we can find that objectionable. Okay, I heard
Mhm.
this, musical genre from somewhere else. I
Like
adopted it,
Kanye, right?
turned it into a hit, and
Katy Perry
TikTok
stuff.
dances.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. Like a young black girl will do a dance, and then some sorority chicks will find it, or TikTok influencers, and
People
steal
are
it.
mad
And
at
just,
Doja Cat right now, for sure.
right. I'm saying we know that those things are trickier. And we could even go into food, whatever. Oh, hey, this Australian sushi spot is opening up. It's like,
That time,
we're allowed to do
best,
that.
yeah, the best Taiwanese restaurant in New York City, a white chef.
Right.
You're
I'm saying
clutching my pearls.
right. I'm saying there's a lot of moving parts in all these discussions.
Mhm.
I think the part with, say, Billie Eilish, you know, looking like she's Graf on the cover of a K Slay mixtape, is that it's the first time people of a certain generation are seeing this kind of iteration of their past, whether they even liked it or not, being mined as a retro look. We
Mhm.
saw this happen with the 80s, with the 90s. This is the first time that, say, both in terms of indie sleaze and, in Billie Eilish's look. And I was near the Garden during her concert, or before her concert. I was walking through the area, and yeah, that's what her fans dress like.
I'm
It
glad,
was
because there was a
it
moment
was
where she was going like Marilyn Monroe. I'm like, come back.
no, it was her fans were looking, pretty juggalo. And
It's awesome.
I was like, wow, is that Hell Rel and Red Cafe, except in the form of a 16-year-old girl?
Yeah.
So
It's like, oh, you weren't even around for that. It's like, so what, right?
right, and I just think that there is a difference because there is this, like, racial schism, or but it's the generational thing to me that is really, really commonplace, and that always happens over and over and over and over. But the added element of, like, you're either dressing like Eminem, but it's also you weren't part of that culture either. So I mean, I get why people would bring it up, but I
100%.
don't necessarily view it as, like, it being based on like negative stereotypes or anything like that, unless it just becomes a total costume and then you're using it as cartoonery, which I don't think she is. I think she
Yeah. Then
genuinely
you're just
thinks
an
it's
asshole.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it exists in examples, but I don't think it is like. I think we jumped to it. I jumped to it too quickly, and we wrote about it in the only book I care about, The Joy of Basketball, about the dress code in the NBA, and there was so much debate about what Iverson, Bobby Jackson, all these kings were doing when they were wearing like throwbacks on the sidelines as their street clothes, and maybe they should wear suits and become presentable for this company. And there was a debate about how a worker falls in line and how a worker expresses themselves, and who provides the most value to a company like the NBA. And of course, we got all those takes right in The Joy of Basketball. But I think about it now, and it is it's just never resolved, right? And I think it is a grievance that we could let float away if we wanted.
I prefer to keep these grievances at hand, cling to them, and keep make them define me as a person. My gripes, if that's okay with you.
Well, do you have gripes about last night? I mentioned Angel Reese, and you were there. You were in the building. Paint the picture for us.
Lads, we did it. This one was for the boys. You know, it was a guys' night out. And we did it. We won the title. We
It was
brought the
you,
WNBA.
Sudeikis, some Sudeikis's boys, more Sudeikis crew.
I mean, yeah, like just shout out to all the fellas. Huge win. But yeah, Barclays Center, incredible energy. Like really, as it should be. I would say that any arena should have great energy for Game 5 of a 5-game finals. So
This is worth mentioning because the WNBA had a moment this season. So yeah, it was
I mean,
bigger than
if
ever.
it was Game 5 in Minnesota, I would expected the energy to be great there too.
For sure.
But New York is a much bigger city, so Barclays was packed to the rafters. I mean, it was jammed, and they gave out these little, those little light bands that glow, and they
On your
flash
wrist,
turquoise.
right?
Yeah, they flash.
You are a drone at this point.
I was like, is this going to explode at some point?
Right.
But so throughout the arena, you had all these glowing lights flicking around back and forth. It was absolutely packed. Loud music. People were very, very pumped up. And then the game starts, and the Liberty come out of the gate awful, just awful. And Sabrina never gets it going. Has basically the nightmare performance for any basketball player. Just shocking
as well.
bad. She wasn't much better either. So the first half was just it. Let me put it this way: if they'd come out and just kind of drubbed the Lynx, it would have been sort of a celebration and whatever. But this was a great game to experience because it was riveting. It was depressing. It was frightening. You were worried that they were going to lose. Their stars never got it going. And then, as people who watched the game know, it ended up going to overtime after a Liberty comeback. There was controversy about calls. All in all, just a pretty ugly game, but yeah, riveting to watch. It was a harrowing experience watching that game live. Even the ugly basketball sort of made it even more, like, I don't know, entertaining, I guess.
All those things you said were true, but we can gather that from the broadcast. Paint the picture.
I'm only telling you about. Well, this is what I mean. It was like you're watching on TV, you get what the plays I'm talking about, but like that late turnover where I forget who it was, picks up her dribble and then tries to throw it to Sabrina and it gets stolen and then immediately fouls her, just like
Jonquel Jones, right? She's gonna.
Fucking kidding me. Like,
these are all things we could have followed on Twitter, but you're in the building, right? And like, I think we've both been to many huge NBA playoff games. What was the
I was
vibe?
that close to Fat Joe's beard. Is it fake? What is his beard actually made of? Is it makeup or is it some sort of substance or is it hair? What is going on
Like
with the
some
beard?
Carlos Boozer shit?
That's what I think it is. I think it's
Hmm.
like a sponge with some sort of tacky black makeup, and he's just going.
Yo, did you see that footage of his leg all bent? I didn't know his leg was like deformed because he had been a body positive person his whole life. He's skinny now, Ozempic, shout out to that drug. But his leg is like bowed out. And I was like, oh, damn. Shout out to Fat Joe, who is now just
I
Joe.
didn't know that because, of
Yeah.
course, Big Pun was even fatter than Fat Joe, or even more body positive than the body positive version of Fat Joe was,
Hmm.
who was dead in the middle of Little Italy,
Yeah.
riddling middlemen who didn't do diddling.
Yeah.
He was so body positive that he couldn't walk. He broke his own foot. And I remember when he came to Rochester, some of my friends were picking him up from the airport. And they're like, they got to the venue and like, hey, you got to pull up on the curb. He can't walk up a step. He didn't die that long after. I mean, this was a deeply unhealthy person. But I remember that little anecdote, like, hey, you actually have to pull up on the curb so he can step down because he can't do one step. He can't do a curb.
I have
I was ominous.
Yeah. I have a couple dear friends who used to have that problem too. We couldn't eat in certain places or sit in certain places at MSG because they wouldn't fit. And occasionally we'd plan a trip and they're like, I need to buy 2 seats. I don't want to talk
Yeah.
about it, but obviously, they got better. Ozempic. Obesity is curable now. It's incredible. But like, yo, I feel that. And I just felt so bad. It's like, can we not go to this dinner because I don't want people to look at me? I'm like, yeah, let's
Yeah.
just go to your house, man. It's all cool. But dude, it feels like such a far away issue for people who can afford Ozempic. But like, yo, Fat Joe being just Joe is crazy. And I kind of was waiting for you to tell me, like, it felt like the epicenter of New York because there was a lot going on. The Mets were playing, they got eliminated. The Jets were playing, football reigned supreme. But like, I had a bunch of
So,
people
so
texting me
yeah, I
from
was going to say to your
Barclays.
point, there was so much going on
Yeah,
that it didn't necessarily have that feeling like all eyes are on this because there was a TV showing the Mets game and there was another TV showing the Jets game.
yeah, it's awesome. It's so
And
awesome.
then, of course, we know the Yankees are going to the World Series and the Knicks start tomorrow.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it didn't actually feel like the center of the universe.
And
It
the
felt
cookies
like
pod was gonna drop. Number 779 was gonna drop.
incredible,
Yeah.
but it felt mostly like I think seeing a few of the clips. I didn't watch the whole games from Minnesota. I was not at home, and after Sabrina hit her shot, and this is not me roasting Minnesota. You looked at the crowd and it was like, kind of a bunch of just middle-aged people, and who are,
Damn, Minnesota. I love
and,
that city.
but I'm saying, great city. I have nothing bad to say about
State,
it.
state. Yeah,
But I mean, Minneapolis, whatever.
yeah.
And it was like, they're here just kind of watching the Liberty and they're going against the Lynx and they're regular fans. And then you go to New York and it's like Spike Lee is here and rappers are here and
Ben
Angel
Dietrich
Reese
is
is
here.
here. Dietrich is here. But
Lucian Dixon is in the house.
no, there was tons and tons and tons of just famous people. Carmelo Anthony. It's packed. Like there's whatever 20,000 people in the building. And it felt like, okay, this is a vision of the future of the NBA if everything goes right. To me, that's what it felt like. And when the game ended and everyone spilled out, around Barclays Center, around the terminal there and the Oculus, and was like on the streets and cheering, and you could hear people for 2 blocks. As you walked away, you heard people chanting, and you're like, can someone please just overturn a car? Like that'd be really sick. Like
Someone climb up a grease
WNBA
pole.
fans,
Yeah.
WNBA fans like lit a cop car on fire and then overturned a school bus. Like
Someone mow that grass on the top of Barclays. Yeah.
let's push this forwards a little bit, with some real wild fan behavior. But yeah, it felt like this is all you could dream of. So I'm bringing this back to I saw Isaiah Thomas, his former basketball player, not the Knicks executive, but the short king.
Sacramento Kings, great.
Exactly. Phoenix Suns legend,
Mhm.
but not Isaiah Thomas, who works for the Phoenix Suns. Yeah, he was like, yeah, it felt like it was rigged, but I get it.
Well, yeah, before we get into that part, I felt like the interesting thing as I was watching on my phone was all my friends, you guys included, were texting me. It's like, we're all here, we're all ready. And there's a palpable goodwill towards the WNBA right now. I think it's been revealed to people's eyes and being like, this is cool. We've been a sexist society for thousands of years culturally. And like, I don't know, it feels good to pay attention to the WNBA. We have Caitlin Clark, we have the Liberty Good, and like a bunch of my friends
Yeah.
got babysitters, and um everyone came, like aunts, mothers, wives, like it wasn't the typical like Knicks playoff game. It was awesome, all dripped out in cookies. And halfway through the game, I started getting these texts being like, this is really bad, like this is tough to watch. Like we're trying to get excited about this, and like Sabrina hasn't hit a shot yet. We don't really know what's going on, but the score is really low. I think the Liberty shot. Oh well, Sabrina and Stewie combined shot 5 for 34, 1 for 13 from three. It wasn't like this beautiful display of the game, and I know it's the lights were bright. In NBA games, game sevens tend to be kind of messy as well. But that was a horrible game to watch. To your point, thrilling because it was tight and the stakes were paramount. But the basketball was so bad. Like it I felt the air in my phone and my message app let out. Everyone's like, "We got so excited for this. This is my wife's first game in person. This sucks." Like she's like, "When is the star going to hit a shot?" I'm like, "Maybe not in until the fourth quarter."
I mean, you were right. And I also feel like women's basketball, because there is like a bit of a patronizing element to it, where people are
It's there.
protective and they want to encourage support of the game in the league, and I feel that same way, and that you want it to be presented in the best possible light. You want to say, like, see how I told you this is a great sport. The women are awesome, and I've kind of gotten over that,
For sure.
and I enjoyed being at the last game because I found it, as I said, it was harrowing. It was infuriating. It was fun. I didn't really care about it being quote unquote good basketball because it would have been a better game if there was less sloppy turnovers and people made shots. Sure, it would have been a better caliber of basketball. But like I know how good these women are, what they do. I know what their limitations are due to, size. Playing with a synthetic, smaller basketball, finishing around the rim is just tougher. So watching that game and seeing, the ease with which like FISA scored and be like, whoa, she is unstoppable. Like this woman is a absolute monster out here.
Yeah.
And the way that the Lynx were just slicing and dicing the Liberty's defense with like backdoor cuts and off of pick and rolls. Like, I'm not saying they deserve to win. They absolutely shat the bed in overtime. But
And in
I
the
felt like,
second half. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, they had a 12-point lead at one point. I felt like watching that game, you did see a lot of elements of like really great basketball and great team defense and things like that. But yeah, it was a sloppy, dirty game. But I didn't feel like, well, here it is, game 7. Women's basketball is exposed as sucking because like that game was sloppy and low scoring. I
I,
felt like the product was fun.
I think the language is where I get myself wrong. It wasn't bad basketball. It just wasn't beautiful basketball.
That's definitely true.
Like I watch this weird feed on ESPN where I'm blacked out of the the broadcast, so I watched above the rim feed, so there's nothing except crowd noise and the basketball. I don't like it as much.
There's just Tupac and Bernie Mac and you
Yeah.
crying at a screening
Yeah.
about their departure
About our
from
lost youth, about our
Mortal
lost
Coil.
youth, right? Our dead youth. But Sabrina was actually playing incredible man defense or player to player defense. This was a good defensive game. If you want to talk about 90s hoops, like there were some holes. There were some holes in the Liberty's rim protection, but all in all, clamped down. Like players weren't just dribbling off of their knee. Players were being guarded. I mean, the Lynx started a full court press. Like it was competitive. It wasn't beautiful. It was ugly, and these turnovers look bad, but it wasn't bad. You know what I mean? There was an immense amount of strategy and skill going on, just not a lot of buckets.
No, and also I thought the Liberty were carried by John Kell Jones, who ended up being named Finals MVP, which I did like. I thought that was
She
cool.
deserves it. I mean, Brianna
And
kind of, but yeah,
but John Kell carried them in the first half, and it was just layups and free throws. And to your point, if people like '90s basketball, well, here you go.
Yep.
Basically no 3-pointers made.
Yeah.
Stifling defense, hand checking galore, people hitting the ground, and
Fouls
every
is the
basket
main character.
and every basket is, I mean, the overwhelming majority of points by both teams were on layups. It was like, can we muscle you around the rim, or can we cut to the basket and find somebody? And to me, yeah, it was not gorgeous basketball, but it had a vibe for sure.
And and to your point, right? Like well, the point about the 90s and the point you made a few episodes ago, I like quite a bit. Like just by the nature of the product, the WNBA is going to have to cycle through some of the things the NBA has cycled through, just because it's a living organism that has to follow the same steps as an organism that might be older than it, right? And the debates kind of echo debates we've had, and the observations kind of echo observations we've had. And in the 90s, there was so much arguing and debate, WFAN, about fouls. Are the refs in on it? We got Tim Donaghy. Everything felt like we were getting played for a larger product, for Michael Jordan to succeed, for this league to expand. I'm like, we're not really watching a true simulation. We're watching theater. And this was talked about as much as the salary cap is now in the 90s. And then in game 4 of the WNBA finals, I think it was 9 free throws for the Liberty and 20 free throws for the Lynx to push it to game 5 in New York. Pretty awesome. And then in game 5 yesterday, Coach Reese was like, the game was stolen from us because we got 8 free throws and the Liberty got 25. And the last call that Stewie tied the game with was a phantom call. There was no contact. I should be able to review that. This is a fraudulent win.
By the way, what was the deal with that call? I couldn't tell because, we saw the replay on the screen, but you couldn't really tell it. And
she has a point.
I'm saying,
like, yeah,
I actually don't have a dog in this fight. They made the call, they challenged it, and they said the call stands. I didn't see the play. I didn't know.
I'll tell you. Stewie went up for a shot, a little baby jumper, pulled a Joel Embiid, feigned contact, but there was no contact. But in real time, it looked like there might have been. She couldn't, whether the refs were cooking the books or they missed it, it happened. And for everyone who's like, it's real Bush League to call out refereeing, no, it's not. This is part of the culture. Let's do it. Let's argue about these fraudulent zebras like ruining our experience. Like, this is awesome. And she had a point, right? Her shade was good. It's like, well, congratulations to Liberty on winning your first. We got 5. Fuck you. We should have 6. And I'm like, awesome. But also, the Lynx had every opportunity to win that game, and they were blowing layups, and they weren't getting clean shots, and the coach did not put them in the position to succeed. When I tweeted that this was ugly basketball, bad basketball. I was like, there was a critical jump ball at the Liberty basket with 33 seconds left. And a Lynx player, I think it was Smith or McBride, just walks into the restricted area and turns the ball over and they take it out of bounds. I'm like, that is bad fucking basketball. And then later on, she forgets she has 4 players on the court. And she's like, we're ready. And Stewie's like, you need to put another player on the court in order for us to start the game. She's like, oh, just go in there. The lights were bright, but like it was a really poorly coached, poorly played game.
Yeah, and I think this is something we've talked about before, that finishing at the basket is a lot more difficult in the WNBA than the NBA because of the size of the players, the material of the ball, etc. This is something that metrics show. And if you didn't read, there was a blog entry where I wrote about Caitlin Clark, and you did some great art for it. And there is discussion of this exact topic, where the NBA stands in comparison to the WNBA in its trajectory as a league, in its development. And the WNBA statistically is right now about 10 years. And I don't want to say behind, but I think we know where this goes. There's not it would be very strange if the WNBA evolved in a way that was completely different from the NBA. It is possible, and it will probably have variances, but we know that shooting is going to get more and more important. Threes are going to be even more, have more primacy than they do. And the idea of a team hitting what did Liberty hit? 1-3?
I mean, the 2 stars hit 1-3. No, they hit a bunch.
But I think they hit maybe hit a couple. But both teams, I mean, what did they combine for from three? There's no way they made 10 threes total.
Well, it's crazy because
that's just not going to be the case in 5 years or 10 years. We know it's going to look like the NBA because players are going to become better and better and better and better.
Starting from AAU starting from before college. Yeah. Well, that's why I think Caitlin Clark, I kind of want to make this take. Like, we know Allen Iverson started the NBA. When he was drafted, the NBA began. I want to say this is the first year of the NBA. I mean, the WNBA. Like, Caitlin Clark entering is just like, oh shit, here we fucking go. Like, this was just, respect to Candace Parker, Maya Moore, Cynthia Cooper, the gods, right? But here we go. Allen Iverson is in the league. Caitlin Clark is in the league. And to your point, it's a cultural shift to being like, it's on now.
I mean, yeah, dude, they combined for 5 threes made. That's not going to be the case. We know where this goes. There's no spoiler.
Yeah.
Well, it's the quote spoiler alert. Right. Spoiler alert.
Right.
In 10 years, there will not be a WNBA championship game 5. Well, there'll be a game 7 because I think they shift next year to 7, where the teams combine for 5 made threes. That's just not fucking happening.
Yeah. And I just want to say this finals was delightful. It was weird. There was some incredible play. The stars shined. It was everything I wanted. It was controversial. Like, people got mad. The Lynx dancing on the graves of game 4. Incredible. I really enjoyed watching this whole thing. I thought the product was great.
I overturned
game 5, but
I overturned a cop car as I was celebrating, walking down Fulton Street.
Devoured an entire Feeney pizza, maybe 2, maybe 3. I threw one on the roof of Barclays, like Breaking Bad style. It was incredible. Uncut. No cut.
What a night.
Yeah.
What a night. Yeah. And now, before I even had a chance to get over our championship champagne hangover, Andrew, the NBA season starts. Tomorrow, the New York Knickerbockers take on the Asterix champs, the Boston Celtics. In the NBA,
their best players hurt. Porzingis is out.
Oh. Well, here's what I want to talk to you about. We've gotten into Mikal Bridges' wonky jumper. I'm seeing some signs that the charmed Nova boys, the nerds of the city of brotherly love, The vibes might be off.
Josh
Andrew,
Hart. Josh Hart, right? Had a miserable preseason. Goes on record and he's candid and he's funny. He'll say shit. But he's like, I should probably come off the bench. I'm lost. I hit like a couple of shots in the preseason. I don't know where my game is at. Fucking Mikal Bridges ruined everything. Everyone was
Mikal
chilling.
Bridges. Mikal
Everyone was
Bridges
happy. And then
putting up putting up Sabrina numbers in the preseason from three.
here he comes, just like ruining everything. Tipping over beer cups, canceling pizza orders, not tipping the bartender. Like he is your nightmare of a homie from college, being like, "Oh, my old friend from college is here. He's gonna make everyone miserable." And then there
His
goes
party is incredible until someone put a hypodermic needle into the sink and Andrew
yeah.
jabbed himself. All right, Knicks vibes. On, off. Tell me.
Still on. It's amazing. This team is going to be fun. If Mikal Bridges is broken, that's funny too. I'm in a zen place with this Knicks team, man. This is all good. But if I wanted to get podcasty about it, if Knicks fans
Please,
are
please
expecting,
do.
if Knicks fans are expecting a championship, if they're expecting sustained excellence through the run of Brunson's health, his prime years of finals, conference finals, championship, Eastern Conference finals, they might be disappointed. I think this team has flaws. And if we wanted to, like we said last episode, um, point out a tipping moment, it would be tipping is not only a city in China. It is when Mikal Bridges was traded for 6 draft picks.
That trade, from a functional standpoint, and then from what we know of what occurred afterwards, I get it. I get that you're trying to play the Celtics. I get that you want to have the best wing defense in the league. I get that Karl-Anthony Towns is most likely going to be 20 feet from the basket against Philly, against the Bucks, against Boston. Those are your main 3 opponents you're going to face. And in each case, you can't really play a traditional helping defensive center because they're either going one-on-one with Embiid or they're guarding a guy who's a floor spacing 5. So I understand how you get to OG, Bridges, Hart. That's the core of our defense. The center is kind of less irrelevant. So let's get an offensive oriented center who can at least be a big body, of course. But I get the idea and why Bridges was so necessary to this plan of how you go against, say, Boston and being willing to stick
Basketball
one-on-one.
wise, great. Vibe wise,
Well, vibe-wise, who can say, right? But I'm saying I get it. I get that they had to get Bridges for this to work. There wasn't another wing defender that made
Trey
that
Murphy?
money.
Six number 1 picks for Trey Murphy doesn't get it done.
Well, I would
2 number 1s for
rather-
Trey Murphy gets it done.
I would rather have Trey Murphy. I think he's
I'm
better.
saying.
And Trey Murphy probably cost 2 draft picks. So I'm saying I do not like the Bridges trade at all. You gave up the Giannis package, for.
You're gonna pause that?
I don't know.
Come on, man.
Unpaused.
Okay.
I'm pressing
Done.
play.
Done. Yeah.
The Giannis package.
Yeah.
For a guy who's never made an All-Star team.
Yeah. Yeah, and who tops out as like a wonderful tertiary player on like the 2020 Suns. Now he has a hitch in his shot. I don't know. We talked about it the last time. I want to take time to send everyone to cookiescoops.com for our blog where we have a preview of every team in the league, 30 descriptions of what we should look out for and think about this season for every team.
We're going to drop that today or tomorrow.
Monday or Tuesday if you're listening on Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah. Just technically before the season starts. So there's a window of about a day and a half here. So you're going to get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I was going through each team, looking at their rosters, looking at their additions, subtractions, coaches, the gossip. It is sort of like baseball. It is a New York, Los Angeles centric league right now, isn't it? Like the Bulls kind of, shout out to Lonzo Ball. I'm psyched he's back. But like the middle class of the NBA, it's kind of losing some steam. I feel like the top dog. This is the year of the top dog.
Hmm. I don't know, because
Mhm.
a few years back, when I forget if it was like, obviously the Nets had moved to Brooklyn, and maybe it was like you had like, I don't know, Melo, and and then you had the LeBron going to LA, and you had the Lakers getting Kawhi, and maybe Melo was gone by that point. But I think you had New York and LA, our two World Series contenders, really were super dominant. Then you had Miami. This offseason, harder to say, because the biggest name to change teams, went from Los Angeles to Philly, which is, in terms of market, a downward, but kind of
Carl
a
Anthony
swing.
Towns is a bigger name than PG, right?
Maybe they're about the same.
Mhm.
Like, depending on who you think is better or has upside or functionality. I think they're the same level of star, though.
Mhm.
Maybe Paul George is slightly bigger, but only because he's played in LA and has a podcast.
I mean, we're just 5 years removed from Paul George being a top 20 player.
Yeah, I mean, I think
An awesome player. I'm a big fan.
great player. His last year in OKC, he was phenomenal.
He's just
But
older
that
now.
was
He's already
years ago.
hurt. Like if Towns got hurt tomorrow, we'd be like that. He's injury prone, but he's still young. Paul George getting hurt is just like, right. That's who you traded for.
I guess I
Or
mostly think
signed
that
back.
you're more Knicks centric. So it's like all roads lead to New York. This is it. The
I
Knicks are the
mean,
story. And I don't think that's incorrect. I just think Brooklyn is in a rebuilding season. We know what's happening in
that's what I mean.
Los Angeles with Kawhi being out and PG leaving. So that team is just the
Oh,
James
but the
Harden
Bronny
show.
James story.
Yeah, there's a big story there. Like, let's talk about the Lakers just for a second, if we're talking New York and LA. Bronny's story, much discussed, kind of irrelevant to the greater
He's not going to play.
fate of the season. He'll get some garbage time, whatever, I suspect. They still probably have the best duo in the NBA, at least in my opinion. I think
Sure.
LeBron and AD, if healthy, still the best. Do we view them as a contender at all?
I do. Not as a top dog, but as you'll see in the preview, I think they're right there. Um, I find them to be in middle of the pack a little bit. I don't like what Palinka did. I don't think having two top dogs is enough. I think they have as much of a chance as like Orlando in the East. Good teams, not in the OKC tier. There had to be more work done. I'm looking at the starting five: D'Lo, Reeves, LBJ, Hachimura, Davis, with Gabe Vincent and Christie off the bench.
I mean,
I'm
other than adding Connect, it's the same team as last season.
I'm not sure Connect is going to play that much. He probably will. I don't know what to make of your boy JJ Redick, the sleeve god, but I don't think he can do enough coaching wise to give a new look to these like older dogs. I think they can probably steady the ship until the trade deadline. They have to do something.
I saw definitely a very obscure stat. It's not one that I know how it's cataloged, but that was called organized offense. And they were talking about some of the Lakers preseason games. And they were talking about the third quarter, the Lakers had 93 to 95% of their plays, whatever it was, qualified as organized offense. They were running sets, that it wasn't just space the court out and someone just goes ISO, figuring it out on the fly, that was all hyper organized. And they were saying that 93, 95% is a staggering amount. Like, that's just outrageous. So there is for sure a newfound dedication to running plays, which I think is kind of adorable, because JJ Redick is like, hey, I'm going to become like the smart basketball dude who's really into plays. And he goes to Lakers, like, I'm going to do it. I'm really doing plays. I'm watching film. I'm coming up with these sets. And I watched the Lakers, some clips, and they ran this really Baroque play with all these screens and all these back things to get a lob. And the guy ended up not really even getting a clean look and missing the dunk attempt anyway. And I liked it. But there's a reason also that basketball isn't all design plays after the, over and over and over and over and over. But I'm interested in seeing if Reddit can make this work, or if we see it tilt back the other direction.
Yeah.
And it's overcoaching, it's over infatuation with plays, it's micromanagement. It's instead of letting guys do what they do, it's trying to make them, a chessboard of guys setting screen after screen and cut and actions and we get a little bit of what happened with Phil Jackson and the triangle offense in New York, where guys like, well, I also just want to play ball, dog.
Yeah. I mean, there's a confusion that I have because Darvin Ham, notoriously bad coach for the Lakers last year, but like LeBron is the player coach. So when they had all those troubles running plays, putting together good sets, I'm like, is LeBron not as smart in real time as I think he is, or is he deferring to the coach too much? Like, why isn't this working? LeBron and AD should just be able to plod along and get looks. But why does Darvin Ham have this much influence on this roster, which is clearly functional without a coach? So I'm interested and not interested to see what JJ Redick can offer. I am so grateful that he's there because he gives us so many jokes and he's going to provide us with so much content. And it is like the best way to celebrate LeBron James, right? To like think about the Lakers. So that's why I said like this season to me, it's like the last gasp of these top dogs. And we've been saying that a long time, but we are on the cusp of the Wemby world, right? Like I would argue Victor Wembanyama is, to me, probably the favorite to be the MVP. Not that he'll win it because his team is going to lose games. He's the best player on earth, right?
Well, I mean, I get my opinions from, Boston themed sports accounts, blogs and such. And I read a preview and he was ranked 14th, right behind Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, expansion draft. Who are you taking, Jaylen Brown or Wemby?
Interesting. Jaylen Brown. Well, what are some of the things that Jaylen Brown does better than Wemby?
What are the things that Jaylen Brown does that's better than Desmond Bane?
No, nothing.
Nothing.
But Wemby is an interesting one because we know that Wemby is arguably the best defensive player in the league. We know that he can score more than Jaylen Brown and just as efficiently. We know that he's a better passer than Jaylen Brown. So carving out an argument to say that Jaylen Brown must be just a troll. Like there's no one on earth who actually thinks Jaylen Brown is better than Wemby. Like that person can't exist, right?
I think they do. I think it is the culture of win something and then we'll put you above Jaylen Brown, who won a fraudulent title, but was the MVP of the finals in the tradition of Andre Iguodala. But there was no one else to give it to because they couldn't give it. Voters couldn't give it to KP because he didn't play enough. They couldn't give it to Derek White because that would have messed up the storyline. And Drew Holiday was better than both Jays. But like Wemby, when you ask like what does Wemby do different? All the stuff you mentioned is true. He's as good of a shooter. He's a better defender. He's a better passer. Assuming they were the same size.
He's not just a better defender.
He's the best defender in the league. Maybe we've ever seen.
He's the best defender in the league. Arguably, at some point, might be the best defensive player ever, in comparison to maybe a slightly below average or at best league average wing defender.
Yeah,
average at best.
And this is, let's just say hypothetically they're the same size. And then we said what we said about their comparison, be like, well, Wemby's a better player. I'm like, well, here's a wrinkle. What if he's well over 7 feet tall and changes the geometry of the vertical game so much that good players can't do shit? That good players have to deviate from what they do well in order to compensate their opponent. What if he changes the color of a game? Like, then we're looking at, and I still have my criticisms of him. He's not perfect, but he's
No.
close to perfect. Like, as a basketball player.
I mean, we've talked a lot about Wemby, and I never get tired of it because
He's
he is
awesome.
in that. He's awesome, but he's in this perfect place where he's both potential and kinetic.
Mhm.
Where we know how good he is, we know what he can do. Like he's shown it. There's no
MVP. Yes.
surprise coming, but also he's not even good yet. If that makes sense, like he doesn't
Sure.
know
Yeah,
what he's
yeah. No,
doing
he's
on
learning.
offense. He gets the ball and he takes bad shots a lot of the time. And it doesn't matter. He's still
Yeah.
great. He can still shoot. He can still draw fouls. He's a phenomenal passer for being a big guy. He sees the court. He's unselfish. He can catch lobs like no one in history. And he still doesn't quite know what to do when he gets the ball at the elbow.
Yeah.
Like at some point, he's just going to start doing what Porzingis started doing. Set a screen, roll to the elbow, turn, rise up. Undefendable.
Yeah.
Not to say that that's what your offense should be based on, but he's still kind of horses around and jab steps and takes weird fadeaways and things like that.
Mhm.
Only because he's not strong and he's not experienced. I mean, he's a kid.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know if I'm going to say, hey, he's better than Luka or he's better than Embiid or he's better than Giannis. Like those are the best players on the planet. But if someone said, hey, no, I actually think he's the best player in the NBA, I'd be like, you're not right, but I'll hear you out.
Yeah.
Let's go through it.
Yeah. There's something very troubling about him, though, that we cannot gloss over. That quote he said, he got into the NBA and he's like, oh, I thought people worked harder. You got a bunch of people not working on their craft over here. I thought you guys were dogs. And I'm like, ooh, this is a big black eye to a scouting report.
I agree. Look, I just came back from Paris, Andrew.
Not like
The
me and
fact
my
that
boy Dadier. Yeah.
the fact that he's not giving us some Diao energy, huge marks against him. He's been like, hey, look, man, this is all pretty easy to me. I like a little red wine, smoke a couple cigs. I like to take it easy. And I think
Wait,
that's the culture of basketball. But like, buddy, you have the craziest dimensions of anyone who has ever lived.
See that juggalo fit.
It's like, you know how I got here? Hard work and wanting it more. I'm like,
I know.
yeah, but a lot of it is because the fact that you're 7'4" with like a 27-foot wingspan and you're mobile. And yes, you did work hard to develop these skills, no doubt. I think you do have a good work ethic. That is part of the reason you're so polished and incredibly diverse in abilities at your insane height. But like, if you were not 7'4" with the longest arms in the universe, all that hard work may not have benefited the same way, man.
You would have been Isaiah Thomas too. And yeah, and this is where I turn into grouchy ass Lynx fans, right? I'm like, if you're such a hard worker, why did your team suck so much last year? It's like, oh, because I'm young, I'm still learning the league. I'm like, well, that sounds like an excuse. Like, what does age have to do with anything? Like, hard work trumps most, according to this philosophy, right? And like, are you waiting for your Scottie Pippen? Because that would also reflect poorly on that take. And we did mention Big Pun and Fat Joe, but like he's singing the beautiful song of '90s grievance and how the culture of NBA today isn't what it used to be. It lacks toughness, it lacks discipline, and him keying into that, big red flag, man. I don't like it.
No, I'm not into it either. I think the angle of going towards Jordan Kobe, in which you say that your success is because of your individual qualities and your work ethic versus your ability to say fly. or be doing 360s at age 17, or be
Healthy.
6'6",
Yeah.
and right, all these things that make you great as a basketball player. And I'm not diminishing like the sacrifice, the psychotic mind state that it takes to succeed on this level. But Wemby doing it is like the ultimate thumb in the eye. Because at least Jordan and Kobe were doing like, hey, you know, we're 6'6". There's giants out here. Wemby, it's like you were the most
Yeah.
preposterous
You were an alien.
made in a
Yeah.
lab basketball player. And you're like, no, it's because I work harder than you.
Yeah.
That's why I'm Wemby, and you guys are making a basketball podcast.
And it's delicious and great, and it sucks because I want to love Wemby with my full heart, but I cannot for this reason. And it's great because the two other players that I think in on his tier, Jokic and Doncic, they kind of flew in the face of that culture, right? Like Jokic is like, basketball is not the most important thing to me, to be honest. You know, like I like to ride horses. As soon as this league's done, I'm going back to my family and my brothers. Doncic, like famously obsessed with nachos, right? Shout out to Mina Kimes and her profile on ESPN, the magazine. Like, has the vices of having fun, joking around, eating bad food, maybe being a little body positive. Like, enough of that. We're back to the venerable age of 60-point games, 70-point playoff totals, you know, and it's sad, but I'm willing to accept it. I am the hero here.
I agree.
I'm
I've
crazy.
always said that.
Yeah.
That the hero is Andrew Crow.
Mhm.
But Wemby's antics, there's a certain Derrick Rose style fan who loves this shit. They love it. They eat it up. Like I love Derrick Rose. He's my favorite player. Wemby's different. Not like these other schmucks who all they want to be is horsing around and doing their dances on social media. They want to be celebrities. Not like Wemby. I love his mentality. He's different. He's playing to a certain crowd. He's singing a song, and those people are going to love him. But I also think in his case, we've seen this enough times that people, especially who are familiar with the Kobe Mamba mentality, Michael Jordan and his mythology,
Mhm.
this is all pretty familiar. And I think we've seen a healthy amount of
Yeah.
mockery of it too, which I think is cool.
Well, Giannis used to commit to this bit. It took him a few years, but we know him as the pervert, right? All he wants to do is talk about having, uh, um, what should we call it, lawful intercourse with his beautiful wife. That he always wants to
Make,
mention that.
making hooey.
Hmm, the H bomb. I don't know if that's the right use of hooey. I
No, it's
think,
not. I'm just trying to find a phrase that was appropriate to you.
yeah, yeah. Um, blazing his wife on his beloved wife on their beautiful wedding day. But like he's the horn dog, right? He's like with the bell and everything. He tried to do the whole like I don't practice with no one. That's my competition. You don't want to let your secrets out to your competition. Now he's just like, guess what I did on my wedding night? I had sex with my wife.
It's not a bad brand.
I mean, wait till Wemby falls in love, and then we'll see the real, the horn dog tier of the true Wemby.
What's funny is Tim Duncan has this shadow over the Spurs organization because he and Pop defined it for years. They had incredible success. They won what
He
three,
stuck
four
around.
championships, whatever it
Yep.
was, and he's still around there. He's the same position. Wemby is the heir to the Tim Duncan role. But Tim Duncan never talked shit like that though. And Robinson, but Robinson was so long ago.
Yeah.
Duncan is still. I mean, he was playing a couple years ago. I mean, relatively so.
I mean,
But
shout out.
Tim
Go ahead.
Tim Duncan didn't really do that stuff though. Duncan wasn't a public moralizer from my recollection of him.
I mean, not to not to divulge too much, but friend of the pod, Atiba Jefferson, like shooting for Slam magazine, has always said, even when Duncan was in his prime, doing the whole like emotionless thing, Timmy Fundamentals was like, that's the most fun guy ever. He not only is he fun, he's friendly. He'll shout you out. Like, don't let him fool you. That guy is goofy and the best. And I believe it. He's like, he's not that serious. Like, he's really cool.
Which is funny because I remember Popovich in an interview just a while back, let's say 10 years. I'm just giving you an idea of the era. And they were talking about qualities they look for in draft picks. And one of them they said was a sense of humor. And I really like that because, they were renowned sort of as this military style organization. And, Popovich ruled it with an iron fist. And the way they played was, so based on making the right decision and being, militaristic. But he's like, no, we want people, whether it's players or coaches or whoever in our front office, we want people who are funny. And I was like, me and Andrew aren't funny enough for the Spurs. Sad.
No. Um, it's funny that Pop or that organization says that because before Tim Duncan shows up, it's David Robinson. Pop is a military guy. Robinson comes from the Navy, and they do things by the books. Sean Elliott, like that was like a very straight laced team. And then, famously, Popovich goes through a personal transformation, and they draft Tim Duncan. They're bad for a few years. Robinson gets hurt, and there's rumors of Popovich getting fired. And then Duncan shows up, and they have on their hands a top 5 all time player. Immediately apparent that he is everything he was advertised to be. And then they start winning games, and all of a sudden, Pop loosens up, and Pop becomes the lovable Pop through Tim Duncan's winning ways. And I believe the authenticity of Pop's demeanor. Why wouldn't I? I think he's a lovable dude. I think players love playing for him. But when he says we value a sense of humor, I almost hear we value players as good as Tim Duncan.
It's a good thing to value.
Yeah.
Last thing about the Spurs before we get out of here. We've got a preview talking about every team, and it's got art that is attached to it. The Spurs are kind of interesting because they added Chris Paul, and they also have Harrison Barnes, two guys who were part of teams that are contenders, teams that have tried to win titles, teams with greater ambitions than what the Spurs had last season. Spurs had a couple lineups with Trey Jones, with Vassell, with Wemby.
Vassell's
where
right.
I think he might be, but they had some lineups that were among the best in the league, like extremely good. You add Chris Paul to that mix. Harrison Barnes is a functional player. He's decent. I would say he's probably like a replacement level starting forward, whatever you want to say. Are they going to be able to find an actual co-star for Wemby through the draft? Or is he too good and they've already put too many decent pieces around him to where like they're doomed to not win with Wemby and then create a situation where it's like Wemby versus the Spurs. They need to get him some help. Like what have they kind of shot themselves in the foot, or can they still get lucky maybe with like the Hawks draft picks or some shit?
It's a great problem to have, but I think the lottery and draft are races towards aliens, green aliens like Wemby. Right. This is the fear I have, founded or unfounded, about many things. Like, how are the Fever going to get to the level of the Liberty when they don't have the cachet of the city draw? Shout out to Indianapolis. But like, is
what
Caitlin
sucks?
Clark going to get a
Indianapolis.
pick?
Shout out to them. Indianapolis,
I mean,
a trash city that no one would ever want to live in. Shout out.
but like, when's the last time a big free agent went? And Pascal Siakam doesn't count, right? Like, I'm talking top dogs. Like, Paul George picks Indiana to go back. Like, he would never.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, I wonder that about Wemby. Like I'm such a pessimist in that way. I kind of see Wemby's career flash before our eyes if they don't do something.
The Spurs
Yeah.
have had a few examples of successful recruitment. The most notable one, I guess, would be like LaMarcus Aldridge. He was a pretty big star when
For sure.
they
The
compelled him
Knicks
to
were
go from
desperate for
Portland
him. Yeah.
to San Antonio. I mean, that's one that I can think of. So it is possible that playing with Wemby would be so enticing to someone.
Why
But the
would
way
you?
that the
Though?
NBA,
Why would you want to be a second fiddle if you're a top dog? If you're
and
old,
also,
CP3.
I mean, CP3 is a different example because, like Dame Lillard, for example, right? Dame goes and joins Giannis in a way that maybe he would have been resistant to, a couple seasons earlier. But he's like, no, I've run out of runway in Portland. No one's coming here. It's like the small market guys have to sort of collaborate because if you're there in Portland and you're Lillard, like, well, no one's coming here. All right, I got to go to Milwaukee. Now Milwaukee is in a position where if they lose, Giannis is going to ask for a trade and then say that they traded him. And then Dame's going to be stuck in the same place. All that to say, I don't know what star who's coming off of, let's say, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years in the league is going to even be able to go to San Antonio. Like, do you get a KD? Do you get a Devin Booker? I mean, this is what I'm saying. Like, I don't know how you get.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that's not happening for 5 years.
Yeah. Well, we have a working model of this in Denver, don't we? They've identified Jokic as arguably the GOAT of his generation. They had to sign Murray because he's proved it before, but he's not a top 25 player, right? And then they had to pay Michael Porter Jr. We're not claiming he's a top 75 player, but they have to keep him there because they're not sure if they can risk having him walk away, become good, and bring someone back to fill his place. They're screwed where KCP doesn't even want to stay there.
Right. So maybe in this idea, Castle becomes your Jamal Murray.
I love Castle. Or becomes your Tony Parker.
Perimeter, exactly. A scoring perimeter player that just can succeed in the contours of what someone like a Jokic or a Wemby is able to do because they're so singular.
And this is a part of the scouting report I'm interested in. How likable is Wemby? If Wemby is like a really popular guy, maybe he can persuade an Oklahoma City Paul George to join him because Russ, people love Russ. The media might not like him or fans, but players really love Russell Westbrook and want to play with him.
Well, Wemby is an interesting case in that because we've heard him say these sort of judgmental things, but I've never heard anything bad about him as a teammate. But he's also was a rookie. There's just not a lot of There's just not a lot of evidence to any direction. But people love playing with Jokic because he's chill, and he also, in the words of Paul Millsap that we quoted in the Joy of Basketball, he's throwing straight cheeseburgers out there that you just cut to the basket. Yeah. You're scoring easier than you ever have in your life.
Donald Trump suiting up for that Denver Nuggets run.
You know who else is throwing cheeseburgers on a weekly basis?
Cookies.
All right.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.